Hello, everyone. We've got a few people joining us. I can see the numbers going up. So I'm just going to do an introduction as we wait for people to join. But I want to give you a really warm welcome today to our research taster session, which is part of a series of events we're putting on this World Parkinson's Day. We're going to start with a bit of housekeeping, again, as the numbers go up. So Emma, if we can have the next slide, please. So yeah, just a bit of housekeeping. We've set this up as a webinar. So unfortunately, it means I can't see all of your wonderful faces. Your microphone and your videos are turned off. But if you can navigate down to the bottom of your screen, you can interact with the chat function. But please do be aware that everyone will be able to see what you put in the chat. And please don't put any personal or medical information in there, as we can't support one-to-one today. If you lose your connection, this meeting is being recorded and we will be circulating it to everyone post event. Excellent. So I want to thank everyone. I can hear it.
Thank everyone for the pre-submitted questions. We received so many, and I want to thank them. It really helped us what we're going to cover today in the webinar, and we'll be having a Q&A later on as well to cover some of the questions that kept coming up. It does mean, unfortunately, we won't be taking live questions, although my colleagues Alex and Laura will be doing their best to keep an eye on the chat. We'll encourage you to reach out to us by email or phone to continue the conversation, and so we can answer some of your questions that you might have. So we'll be covering today an overview of what's going on in Parkinson's research, introducing how Parkinson's UK fits into this, spotlighting a few exciting projects, hearing from a couple of people who are already involved in research, what it means to them and what they get out of it. As I say, having a Q&A panel discussion and ending with how you can get involved and keep up to date with research. So I'm Catherine. I'm delighted to be leading you through the session today. And I'll be doing this alongside my colleague Alice, who will introduce later. I'm the Research Communications Lead at Parkinson's UK, and I've worked with the charity now for about 6 years, just over, I think. And prior to this, I worked in a lab in Cambridge, spent a lot of the time in a dark room looking at cells under a microscope, trying to understand what's happening when we age. But now it's part of my role to make sure people with Parkinson's can stay up to date with research and make sure it's accessible to everyone. I also popped on the slide here what keeps me busy and what I like to do outside of work. So we will be introducing some special guests as we go through, so I will introduce them in due course. I always like to start with what we know about Parkinson's, and as this slide explains, Parkinson's is a condition that affects the brain, and the area that's worst affected is called the substantia nigra. And a few years ago, I visited the Parkinson's UK Brain Bank, which I'll talk a bit more about later. And they shared what I thought was an interesting fact, that this area of the brain is actually not much bigger than kind of the top of your two thumbs put together. And it's this area of the brain that is involved in coordinating movement. And in this region of the brain, our brain cells called dopamine-producing brain cells. And in Parkinson's, these brain cells are lost, they die over time, which means people with Parkinson's don't have enough of a chemical called dopamine. So this is what causes the symptoms of Parkinson's, but many of us will be aware that it's not just movement symptoms that people with Parkinson's will experience. There's over 40 symptoms associated with the condition. This could be lack of motivation, problems with sleep, constipation, and everyone is different. And current treatments work to kind of boost those dopamine levels in the brain and mask the symptoms. And there's nothing at the moment that can slow or stop that gradual loss of dopamine producing brain cells in the brain. Emma, if we can just go back one slide, please. Sorry about that. Yeah, and so if we flick to the next slide, please. So this is why research is important, to find treatments that can help manage those symptoms that I mentioned, or find something that can slow or stop the loss of those brain cells. And this is particularly important because Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world, and that statement's being used more and more. It's not exactly clear why, but this could be down to people living longer, and age is the biggest risk factor for Parkinson's. It could be down to people being diagnosed with the condition, more across the globe as the awareness grows of Parkinson's. But just to put this in context, there are over 10 million people worldwide live with Parkinson's, about 153,000 people in the UK. And research has come a long way already. So current treatments, as I say, look to kind of mask the movement symptoms and manage some of the symptoms of Parkinson's. It can be levodopa-based medication as a way to manage the condition. And they have improved over the years in the way they're delivered. People on their Parkinson's journey can be given different options and different treatment options as they go through. There's deep brain stimulation, which is a surgical method to help people manage their movement symptoms. So there are things available, but there's more to be done. And as I say, really want to look for that thing that can slow or stop the progression of Parkinson's. So if we can go to the next slide. There's challenges to find treatments for Parkinson's. The majority of people have Parkinson's with no known cause, so it's not clear why they've gone on to develop the condition, why these brain cells are dying over time. And this is also termed idiopathic Parkinson's, which some of you may have heard. For a minority of people, the figure is changing and isn't exact, but about 10 to 15% of people might have a genetic cause of their condition or a genetic factor that increases their risk of developing Parkinson's. But researchers are still investigating what's causing these dopamine producing cells to die over time. And to add complication, people with Parkinson's, as we've alluded to, experience different sets of symptoms. And we will come back to discuss this a bit more in the Q&A. But there are clues forming. And I want to kind of use the analogy that our director of research uses, so Professor David Dexter, about this idea of a jigsaw puzzle. We're beginning to piece together what's happening in Parkinson's, but the problem is we don't have that overall picture to follow. That's what we're working towards, that overall view of Parkinson's. But as we go towards building that complete picture, we can start following some of these clues, trialing treatments to really start finding those treatments before we've got that complete picture of Parkinson's. So I put some of the clues up, and there's research happening in all of these areas, from looking at clumping of material called alpha-synuclein, which is thought to cause the death of dopamine-producing brain cells, to looking at the brain cell batteries called mitochondria that seem to be dysfunctional in Parkinson's. So there's already these things that are being investigated and targeted to stop those kind of underlying causes of the condition. So if we can go to the next slide, I want to give you a sense that there's lots going on. There's lots going on in Parkinson's research. And I've taken this slide actually from a gentleman called Dr. Kevin McFarthing. He has Parkinson's. He's a biochemist. And every year he compiles what's called the Hope List. And again, we'll be sharing some links as we go and making sure they're circulated in a post-event email too. What he does is looks at all of the registered research that's going on in Parkinson's, and it helps to convey just how many bits of research are going on in the Parkinson's area. And this slide focuses on clinical projects. So that's research that's already looking at potential treatments in people. So looking at trials of these treatments in people with Parkinson's across the globe. And as you can see, there's There's trials ongoing looking at disease-modifying therapies. So when we use that term, we're talking about things that might potentially slow or stop that progression of the death of those dopamine-producing brain cells over time and slow the progression of Parkinson's, or looking at symptomatic therapies, so looking at targeting those individual symptoms of the condition. But you'll see that there's a lot going on. And research, clinical research, can be kind of categorized into different phases, where you start with phase 1 trials, which are often small trials of trialing a new treatment in a group of people, moving through to phase 3 trials, where these are much larger groups of people. And this is the final hurdle before a potential treatment, if shown beneficial, can enter the approval process and hopefully become available through places like the NHS. So I hope that gives you a sense that there is momentum and there's lots going on in Parkinson's. If we can go to the next slide, please. So where does Parkinson's UK fit into all of this? You know, we're here for every Parkinson's journey. We're campaigning for better treatments and care, and we're running life-changing support services whilst also funding groundbreaking research. So I wanted to give you a sense of what we're doing at Parkinson's UK as Europe's largest charitable funder of Parkinson's research. So we're currently funding about 50 research projects, mainly within the UK, but also globally. Certainly seems to be a big movement of collaboration across the globe to work towards this kind of united aim to find better treatments. To put this in kind of monetary terms, last year we committed more than 10 million towards research. And at this point, I want to say thank you, because all of this couldn't be done without people donating to Parkinson's UK. But I also want to highlight that the Parkinson's community are the driver behind our Parkinson's research programme. We work with over 500 research volunteers to shape our work, our priorities, and to cascade information. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, because I'm sure there's many of those people on the call here today. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I want to now give you a flavour of some of the research that we're funding. And we're funding research from understanding the causes and progression of the condition, all the way to funding research into trialling those potential treatments in clinical trials. So I want to just spotlight one example of how we're working to better understand the causes of and progression of the condition. And the answers lie in the brain. So actually we fund a vital resource called the Parkinson's UK Brain Bank, where people have donated their brains, so people with and without Parkinson's, to Parkinson's research. And what this allows the resource to do is send this really precious tissue across the globe. Around 50 research projects a year receive this tissue to start understanding and making discoveries of what's going on in Parkinson's, to unlock new treatments. Next slide, please, Emma. And at this point, I am delighted to be handing over to Marta, who has recently been awarded a fellowship grant from Parkinson's UK, which is all about nurturing the future leaders of Parkinson's research. And I am really pleased that she's here to share with you what she's being funded to do. And she's based at the University of Cambridge. So I'm going to hand over to Marta.
Hi everyone, greetings from Portugal. I forgot to mention, Catherine, but I'm also a registered brain donor, because I'm a romantic and I'd like to think I will continue to do science even after I'm gone. But today I'd like to share a little bit of what we do in terms of research. If I can ask, to pass to the next slide. So the first question that I was posed is, what has the gut got to do with Parkinson's? Well, there's a lot of research, particularly cohort and epidemiological research, showing that constipation can be a prodromal feature of Parkinson's disease, meaning it exists, so it presents itself before the diagnosis. And so young adults who experience constipation are 2 to 4 times more likely to develop Parkinson's in the future. And also people with inflammatory bowel disease are also more likely to develop PD. And there's a lot of interesting studies going on the risk of onset, but my particular research focuses on constipation and disease progression. So once you have the diagnosis, does constipation still play a role in how the disease presents and progresses over time, because as we know, Parkinson's can be so different and can progress in such different rates. Could constipation be one of these risk factors, so to speak? And so our own cohort studies show that this is very likely. Constipation was associated both in our studies and studies of other researchers around the world as a risk factor for faster disease progression, particularly to cognitive problems, as well as some balance problems, but particularly to cognition, which, if some of you are experiencing constipation right now, I don't want you to be alarmed. For me, I thought it was a particularly exciting opportunity because unlike older age or genetic predisposition or even sex, which are known risk factors that we can do very little about, we can try to address constipation and we can try to understand it better in order to treat it. And that's exactly what my research is hoping to do. So we first, in order to research constipation better, we did a lot of focus groups with people with Parkinson's disease, and we developed a questionnaire that allows us to study constipation a little bit better, but also developed, or at least validated, I should say, objective measures of studying constipation, because a lot of us are constipated or at least have delayed transit time, and we're not aware of this. And because there is a link potentially between this and disease progression, we really want to tackle that. And so Parkinson's UK have very kindly funded our next 3 years of research, where we're going to see whether ginger, who's a gut motility agent, helps reduce inflammation. And also we're going to try and reduce methanogen, which is a gut that is produced by our microbiota in the gut and has been associated with constipation, and to see whether that brings any changes in terms of constipation and inflammation, which we think are the mediators between the gut and the brain. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done in the next 3 years, but there is things that we can do now. First of all, if you do experience constipation or any gut symptom, I'd like you to not attribute it to Parkinson's as a normal feature of Parkinson's, or maybe attribute it to growing old, or maybe saying, as I've often heard in my research clinic, oh, I've always had it. So just in case I'm right, just in case this research does show this association, try to tackle constipation with your GP, with your PD nurse, and also help us participate in research, because we could not do this without you. Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, thank you ever so much, Marta. Thank you for that really useful overview of your research. And we will be chatting to Marta a bit more when we get to the Q&A section. So thank you. So I just want to continue spotlighting a few other projects that we're funding, specifically now looking at an example of something that has the potential to slow, stop, or reverse Parkinson's. So we're working with a company called Herantis Therapeutics. So we're funding this research through our Parkinson's virtual biotech, which is a way in which the charity funds drug development and moving that research through those phases, and getting it closer to approval and into the hands of people with Parkinson's. So this example is, Emma, if we can just go back a slide, please. This example is looking at an early stage trial. So it's in that phase 1 category, looking at 24 people with Parkinson's and looking to see if an injectable form of a growth factor can help protect brain cells. So what are growth factors? Growth factors are, some researchers I've heard describe them as fertilizers for the brain. They really have protective properties, which obviously is very interesting in Parkinson's. And this version of a growth factor is interesting because it can be delivered via injection under the skin. So it's not having to be delivered in overly invasive ways. And I think it's also a really great example of a collaborative project. So the Parkinson's Virtual Biotech is a method of funding that we do in conjunction with the Parkinson's Foundation, a US charity. And this project is also being funded by the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So again, shows this unity towards a single goal. But I think this is an interesting one to keep an eye on. And yeah, a link has been put in the chat if you want to read more about this. That was just an introduction. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I also want to give you a flavour that it's not just research into new drugs that's happening, you know, not just more pills and medication that are being looked at for Parkinson's, but we have a dedicated funding round at Parkinson's UK that focuses on what we call non-drug approaches. So this is all about helping people live well with Parkinson's, from investigating ways to better manage and monitor Parkinson's and the symptoms associated, to finding the best way to deliver physiotherapy, because, we tell people a lot it's really beneficial for you to stay active, but we know that apathy and a lack of motivation is a symptom of the condition. So how can we come together and make sure we're supporting people and providing the best services as well to enable people to stay active? Also, we're doing research into kind of devices and gadgets that might help specific symptoms. Technology is evolving all the time, so this is definitely a big part of research that we fund. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to spotlight an example of a research project that we're funding out of the University of Nottingham, led by Professor Stephen Jackson. Him and his team are looking at a kind of wristband that delivers rhythmic and gentle electrical stimulation, so stimulating nerve cells in the wrist. And it's exciting, I think, because, again, it's in early stage trials. So 30 people with Parkinson's are currently being recruited to take part and see whether it's beneficial to help with tremor. Alex has kindly put the link in the chat. So if you're in the Nottingham area and you experience tremor, this is an example of a research project you can get involved with. And they've had a lot of success with this device in Tourette's, looking to control involuntary movements. So that's why it kind of led to them applying to us for a Parkinson's UK grant to see if it can help with tremor. So yeah, please do find out more about that if you're interested. Next slide, please. And I want to end my kind of introductory section by just bringing up our tech guide. So this is something that Parkinson's UK put together towards the end of last year, and we continue to build on it. So this is a catalogue of tech, so technology, products, from kind of apps to help give you medication reminders, to swallow prompts, to kind of devices that can be held in the hand to help with tremor. They've all been designed for and by people with Parkinson's. But it's important to point out that these haven't all gone through clinical research. So there's not research evidence behind these. But we put this together as a way for people to navigate in one place what people are already trying and what's out there. Some of them are free, some of them have a price tag associated. So a key part of this is community reviews. So we are helping to add community reviews to these products. We've got 45 products listed at the moment, and I think 8 of these products have been reviewed, where we'll be adding more and more as we go through the weeks and months. So it just is a really useful resource for what people can do now. And we've got a link here to the tech guide, and we can also, there's an option to kind of post out printed copies of this too, if that's interesting. But I would like to hand over now to Alice, who's going to take us through the next section with some special guests too.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello, everybody. My name is Alice. I am the Research Participation and Engagement Officer at Parkinson's UK. And previously, I've worked in a whole different range of communication roles, from local government to zoos and science centres, but all with the theme of science communication, which I've studied as well. And outside of work, I've put a few other things that I like to do as well. So today, I'm going to be talking to you about why you should get involved in Parkinson's research, and also I'll be speaking with a couple of our volunteers who have taken part in research as well. So if we can have the next slide, please, Emma. Thank you. So why get involved in research? Well, the simple answer is that we need better treatments for Parkinson's, and we're not going to get there without research. And the more people who get involved in research, the quicker we're going to get there. And we also think it's really important that research is representative of everybody living with Parkinson's. So it's really important that no matter what your background is, whether you think, research is for you or not, that you get involved, because if everyone isn't involved in the research, then the treatments might not represent everybody too. Can I get the next slide, Emma? Thank you. So what types of research can you get involved in? There are lots of different types of research. As Catherine mentioned earlier, there's lots of different symptoms of Parkinson's, there's lots of different research projects that are happening looking into Parkinson's. So you can take part in a variety of different ways, whether that is filling in surveys or taking part in drug trials. There really is something for everybody, and the topics vary too. So there's opportunities to take part in mental health research, having interviews with researchers, or even testing some of those devices that Catherine was mentioning. Some of that tech is actually going through clinical trials, and you can be involved in that kind of research as well. So there really is something for everyone. But how do you find out? Thanks, Emma, preempting me there. So you can find research using our website. So on our website, we have something called the Take Part Hub. And I think someone's going to post in the chat how to a link to that. And to use it, all you need to do is pop in your postcode, and it'll bring up research studies that are happening near you that you can take part in. And it's all arranged by location. So the ones that are nearer to you are going to be at the top of the page. And there'll be opportunities that you can take part in from the comfort of your own home to opportunities that you can travel to and take part in. And to use it, all you have to do is click into research that interests you, and it'll tell you a little bit about what the research involves, who the researchers are looking for, and then how to get in touch with the research team to say you'd like to be involved in it. Alternatively, if you're not someone who really enjoys searching on websites, you can give us a ring as well. So just use the number on the slide here, and we will help support you to get involved. So I'm going to, oh no, I've got another slide, sorry. So if we have the next slide, please, Emma. So taking part in research doesn't have to be just taking part in research studies. You can also volunteer with us. So we have a range of volunteer roles all about supporting research. So I've highlighted a few of them here. We've got our patient and public involvement contributors who help us to shape research and how it's designed and carried out. They get to work with researchers and influence how that research happens. We have lay grant reviewers who help to decide what research is funded by Parkinson's UK. And we have research champions as well, who help us to promote taking part in research more widely. Now it's time for me to stop talking for a while. So I'm going to introduce Adrian. I think there's a slide. Yeah, so I'll introduce Adrian first, who is one of our research volunteers, but he's also a group coordinator for the Tees Valley Parkinson's Support Group, and he's active in the North East working age group as well. And Adrian has been involved in lots of different research projects, and I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit more about that now. So Adrian, could you tell me a little bit about why you got involved in research and some of the benefits you found from being involved as well?
Yeah, hi everyone. With a family history of Parkinson's on my father's side, his mother and two of her brothers had it, and also watching my wife's father, who had Parkinson's from the age of 48, and seeing him slowly decline with the disease, I looked into research initially from a distance. But as I became a bit more interested when I started showing signs of Parkinson's myself about 10 years ago. But since my formal diagnosis 4 years ago, it is something I felt it was very important to get involved in, not only for myself and potentially my children, but for the future generations who could benefit from the results developed from the research programs I personally get involved in. As Alice mentioned, I've been involved in quite a lot of programs over the past few years, and I've had very positive experience from a wide range of research programs that I've been involved in, including a speech and swallow improvement studies, during which I've learned techniques that I still use on a daily basis, helped me with the very important part of daily life, that of communicating with others. I've undertaken several movement improvement studies, all helping me with my walking gait and balance, which I'm certain have helped me to be more active, improve my health both physically and mentally. During recent memory improvement drug research programs, I was shown memory exercises which are possibly helping slow my cognitive decline. And this is, I feel, a vital part of research. With Parkinson's UK and Dementia UK recently investing heavily in creating pioneering research centre, this will hopefully help progress in treatment of cognitive decline in people with Parkinson's. I've also taken part to help the diagnosis of Parkinson's, one of which is on eye tracking movement. It was very interesting and has shown very good signs of being a tool to help with early diagnosis of the Parkinson's disease. I've also took part in several programs involving testing of new tech, such as Keep On, Keep Up app, which is an app that's developed for those at the later stages and have less mobility and are stuck in the home, so they can keep moving. I've also taken part in health management program, Live Well with Parkinson's. This was a year-long study with health professionals giving you regular guidance and help improving your overall well-being. This gave me a positive outlook on my mental attitude in dealing with Parkinson's. As mentioned earlier, there's new developments coming around all the time, and I'm currently a member of the Patient Council for the Torres project team. They're developing new tech for the future use by people with Parkinson's using AI to help monitor their condition. All of which has given me hope that we can all stay active, healthier and independent longer. With all the studies, I found while speaking with the individual researchers you see the passion they all have to help improve the treatment and lives of people with Parkinson's, which I find personally uplifting and keeps me positive in my ongoing personal fight. And not to mention, by doing research, you get free full MOT health checks whilst taking part. This beats waiting around for months to see consultants. So in summary, if you're thinking of getting involved in research, go for it. Not only do you get a front row seat and new developments in the fight against Parkinson's, you get first-class help and advice on a regular basis in managing your condition from enthusiastic and driven professionals, which is not always the case with the limited resource of the NHS as it stands today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Adrian. It's just really wonderful to hear how being involved in research has been beneficial to you after you've taken part too, that it's not just something that ends once you've completed a study. So thank you so much for sharing. And now I'm going to pass over to Helen George, who is another research volunteer. She's a retired GP who was diagnosed in 2017, and now she's very active in PD Warrior, boxing. She's also an artist in her spare time, and she sells art for donations to Parkinson's UK, which is really wonderful. And Helen volunteers with us as a patient and public involvement contributor, which I think she'll mention some of the things she's been involved in as well. So Helen, without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. It's a real honour to be asked to talk today. I was diagnosed with PD in 2017 after developing a lot of weird and diverse symptoms. Insomnia, I think I was the worst patient I'd ever had with insomnia, 2 hours a night. Moods, anxiety, low back pain, frozen shoulder, difficulty tracking and eye movements. And I was working as a GP at the time but the diagnosis took ages. I think my colleagues had noticed that I had a stoop, but were too polite to say anything about it. It became hideously clear to me when I was walking past a shop window in Henley, had a look and thought, that's Lego Man, because that's what I look like. Then I twigged a problem, which I denied for a while before, I think. So in the end, I had to retire in 2019, and I had my deep brain stimulator 2 years ago. Before that, I'd been on apomorphine because I got so bad that was the only way I could get out of the house. Taking part in research has been a real boost to my self-esteem. It's enabled me to feel useful again, despite not being a doc. Medicine still fascinates me. I do 1 or 2 sessions PD Warrior a week, some Nordic walking, and boxing really is very cathartic, as you can imagine. I have a large network of friends with and without Parkinson's, and really they are the best. They will keep me going above and beyond. And art also keeps me going and has kept me going through really bad times. Just to whiz through some of the research that I've experienced and taken part in, and some of it's been mentioned, like the Q&As, tick box interviews. One of my favourites must be translating documents into plain English, and that's where we take a document, usually a medical or something about Parkinson's, and you look for anything that's overcomplicated, hard to understand, jargon basically. So I always say, why use 20 words when 5 will be quite adequate? So that's then the third option I've chosen is a focal group. And the one I chose was a recent one which involved genetics and oxidative stress. And you're probably glazing over already, but don't worry, it's not too high tech. It was an application for a research grant from Parkinson's UK, from a private company. And this I mentioned because they really acknowledged the importance of liaising with Parkinson's UK if your study is going to be useful and you're going to ask the right questions. So basically, it's all down to your mitochondria, that battery of cells that we've mentioned that keep your cells going. And recently, we've have located Pink One and Parkin. They always have lovely names, don't they? Which sit on top of your outer membrane of your mitochondria, and basically everything's fine until you start to get breakdown of your mitochondria, and then they just tag it, bag it, and bin it, preferably before you can get distribution of the toxic substances like the free radicals and the oxidative stress taking over. And this will hopefully become a patient advisory board project if the grant comes through. And I rather fancy the idea of getting involved with that because it does sound interesting. So that's the beauty of it. You see, you pick what you like and say, yes, I'll have a go with that. I have to say I'm a great bookworm, so any problems, I always buy a book. And Amazon did come in useful here, I have to say, because my last foray into genetics was in 1984, and it's changed a bit since then. Just fairly briefly, Top Hat. I don't know whether you've heard of this, but it's a trial involving ondansetron. Sorry, my mouth's dry. And this is an anti-hallucinogenic. When you get hallucinations and dementia, it's really devastating for all around you. We used to use neuroleptics, but they were just as bad because they actually caused Parkinsonism symptoms. We used clozapine and quetiapine, and they were all right, but clozapine's a dirty drug, really. So we decided to try the ondansetron, and that really seemed to work. But unfortunately, halfway through the trial, there was a glitch, and the trial had to be stopped. And we were recruiting at that time, but we just found it impossible to get people to re-sign on. So we did a brainstorming exercise, and I actually got involved with that, which I was really felt, yeah, this is good. And in the end, we came to a conclusion that we'd do a programme of lectures at each branch, each Parkinson's UK area, and that we would see what we could spark in the motivation, basically. And Suzanne, the clinical lead, was going to take part and do this. And you might think that's absolutely impossible, but you have not met Suzanne, who is like a bit of dynamite, basically. But yeah, that's very positive, I think. And just because I've been part of the group for about 2 years, I go to all the meetings pretty much. So it's not just lip service when you get involved. You really feel that you might actually be doing something and people are listening to you. Anxiety is another thing that there has been some good studies on, and I like it because that's one thing I've suffered from, and the courses are really useful, and they're usually led by a clinical psychologist, and it's been CBT and ACT that I've been involved with. They're free, they're online, don't have to pay. What's not to like, really? So I think even for curiosity, but for your own mental health, it's not a bad idea. And finally, a lot of us poor devils get pain as well as with our Parkinson's other causes. So I've got psoriatic arthritis and I've also got PD pain. And this really irritated me because you go from pillar to post, doctor to doctor. And first of all, I just wanted to get a clear diagnosis. And scurrying about, I found that the King's College Hospital actually do proper pain charts for PD. Tick. They then categorise types of pain into about 7 groups, so you can find out what you've got and get it treated adequately. So this was very useful for my role as PPI, because of course I had by this time linked to a study in Newcastle Uni, and they were trying to find out what motivates us to change and to form positive coping strategies and to make this into a toolkit of resources. This has been a pleasure to do this work, to be honest. Yeah, and there's always an emotional side to pain. So if you are interested in looking into mindfulness at all, we'll be giving an example of some of the literature that I personally found useful. And I hope that will as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Helen. You've been involved in so many things as well, and it's really wonderful to hear the things that have really been a benefit to you and that you found it so personally important as well. So now I think we've got a little bit of time to answer some questions that have been pre-submitted. So everyone who's spoken today will be on the panel. And I'll hand back over to Catherine, who's going to lead this part.
Yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, thank you everyone for sharing so far. I hope it's been interesting, and yeah, we've got about 10 minutes or so now to have a bit of a chat. As I say, this is very much based on the pre-submitted questions that came in, and actually there's a couple of questions that came up that will be relevant as well. So the first question I'd like to pose to the panel is about, you know, this idea that Parkinson's might be an umbrella term, and actually there might be lots of different types of Parkinson's. So what do we feel about this? I wonder, Marta, if we can come to you first.
Well, I'm very much interested in the gut-brain axis, and now there's this working theory by Borgarmer in Denmark that a subset of people or a subset of Parkinson's may actually start in the gut and travel up to the brain. And I think this is fundamental to recruit the right patients to the right trials, and also try to understand a little bit more about the biomarkers that we should be using. For example, in this body-first theory, people who have a body first Parkinson's type would have a lot more alpha-synuclein, which is this protein that you mentioned in your earlier slides, compared to those with a brain first Parkinson's. Yet most clinical trials now might be using circulating alpha-synuclein as the outcome, whereas some people will have quite a lot and some people might have very few or at least low concentrations. So I think we really should nail this down better, so that the clinical trials are more targeted as well. Because perhaps some of the clinical trials that failed in the past were not because the drug was not right, it was just they weren't recruiting the right subtype of Parkinson's for that particular drug. So I think this is very exciting work that is ongoing and very needed. And that will explain why people have a tremor, some people don't, some people progress fast and others don't. So I'm hoping to contribute to this body of knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. And just to clarify, biomarkers, there's nothing at the minute that can be fundamentally measured to say that someone definitely has Parkinson's, or to indicate, how Parkinson's is progressing over time. So having that measurable biological factor could be really beneficial to Parkinson's, and there's lots of activity in this area, and definitely there's a flurry of work last year certainly being shared on this. And Marta, really great to hear where your work fits into that too. So yeah, I think it is really exciting and will really help the way that trials are designed to test potential treatments and hopefully overcome some of the frustrations that Parkinson's research has experienced. I wonder if Adrian or Helen, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah,
Adrian.
I mean, as she was mentioning, on a cell level basis, looking at the different factors, and the disease is an umbrella thing. I mean, whilst Parkinson's are very varied with a wide range. I mean, I've met many people with different some with tremors, some with issues of speech, like I do. It is varied, and it is an umbrella term. But one thing that I take from everybody is we're all in the same boat and fighting the same disease. So, I mean, hopefully by all these joined up research programs, we can all benefit, whether we've got 40 symptoms or just the one symptom. We all get something out of the research programs.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adrian. Really good reflections. I don't know, Helen, if you want to add anything before we move on to the next question.
Not really. I think you sort of included everything. I mean, I actually because I like lists. I've actually written down all the causes and that sort of thing. And when you look at that, you think, well, no wonder one thing is not curing this or not, sufficient, because it's just like going around a rabbit warren, isn't it, basically, and hoping that you come out the end. But I think, the alpha-synuclein, I understand there's about 6 different treatments for that. And that's really encouraging because they're all different. So I think we've got something to play with there, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helen, and leads us quite nicely on to the next question, which I think by far was the most common question that came up when people pre-submitted their questions, and that's, when do we think there'll be a cure for Parkinson's, or do we think we're close? It's very hard to put timeframes on these things, so we're not going to do that. But I want to maybe go around the panel and see if we can just share our feelings on that question. And Marta, I wonder again if we can start off with you.
Of course, I'd like to say that myself and a huge body of researchers are working on their holidays, at late hours on the weekends, towards a cure and towards therapies that will delay disease progression. And I perhaps might share with Professor Barker a bit of a controversial opinion, which is, whilst we are striving for the cure and the biological mechanisms that contribute to the disease onset, so we can halt it even before it begins. I think the more feasible result that our research efforts will probably attain is to delay disease progression to a point where it perhaps will become like hypertension or diabetes, where once you're diagnosed, you will live with the condition with a decreased quality of life, but you will live well. And that will buy us time until that cure is finally found. But I think that's probably what we should be thinking when we think ahead about the future.
Thank you, Marta. Helen, anything you want to add that you haven't already shared?
Yeah, I think that sums it up absolutely to the to where we are. Yeah, I don't think I could put any more info down.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. How about you, Adrian? Anything you want to share?
On you yourself. No, I mean, I say there's signs of promise for different research programs, and there's a few people in the chat asking about specific treatments for the individual symptoms. And as Helen has been a GP, we'll think focusing on one element and the thing I can quite have a knock-on effect to others. So I mean, for me, studying at genetic cell levels to try and find blockers is the way forward to stop the progression of Parkinson's, and the development of the different symptoms is the way to go, for the way I think. And there's a joined up approach from all nations across the world to start coming through with new research breakthroughs and basically stopping wasting resources in blind alleyways. So yeah, we're getting there, but slow progress.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian, and thank you all for your reflections. I think I want to come back maybe to what I shared at the start with the hope list, the idea that there is a lot going on, and a lot of that work is to look for something that can slow or stop the progression of the condition. So there's definitely momentum gathering. Marta, do you want to add something?
Sorry to interrupt, Catherine.
No.
I just wanted to say, to share or even vent some of the challenges, I think the unique challenges of Parkinson's research. So for example, unlike cancer, our animal models so animals don't get Parkinson's. We try to have models that are Parkinson's-like, but that really does hinder research, because the biological mechanisms that we try to study in animals before testing, for example, drugs in humans, are not quite the same. Also, the fact, as we alluded, there seems to be different disease types and with different presentations. And so again, probably cures might look different once we identify the mechanisms and the subtypes. And so that does slow down a research project, but we are working very hard on it.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. And in the interest of time, I think we're going to go to the final kind of question or comments from the panel, and that's to finish on going round and sharing what we're excited about. So maybe that's a theme or a bit of ongoing research, just again to show that there's hope and there's things going on that we're excited to see. I wonder if, Helen, we can start with you.
Well, I suppose I was excited to see the adaptive deep brain stimulator. I had mine stimulator 2 years ago, and I actually asked for the adaptive version, or whether they got it, but it wasn't in at that point. So I was, I missed it by a year or so. But yeah, I reckon it's been a bit of a life changer for me. I mean, I would not say that I'm perfect. I haven't got 100% cure, which some people sort of think is obtainable. But it has meant that I can carry on and get a good quality of life and pretty much do what I want to do, which is great, basically. Whether the adaptive form is going to be any better, well, it should be, I think, because we're going to, it should be, because basically it will, instead of stimulating the brain all the time, it stimulates it when you get the wonky brain wave, the beta brainwave occurring. So it fires when it's got need to, not all the time, which is supposed to decrease your fluctuations. But yeah, I think that's a positive.
Fab, thank you. Yeah, really, you know, the improvements in deep brain stimulation technology is certainly one to watch out for. And
the book.
You know, people are already experiencing and being able to kind of explore some of that. I guess just to highlight that deep brain stimulation is not going to kind of slow or stop the progressive loss of those dopamine producing brain cells. So, you know, if you think of it that way, it's not a cure, but as you say, Helen, really useful in managing the symptoms and really can be life-changing for many. So yeah, we'll make sure we share some links about deep brain stimulation too. So we're rapidly running out of time. So I want to make sure maybe Marta will go to you next, and then we'll go to Adrian.
There's a lot of research that excites me out there in Parkinson's field. For example, repurposing drugs that exist and we know they're safe, that might be also useful in Parkinson's disease. There are a lot of trials on that. Gadgets that help us manage symptoms over time, and also this knowledge that Parkinson's doesn't exist only in the brain. I think that's quite an interesting body of research. But just because of the Q&A and what Helen and Adrian have been saying, one of the things I find more exciting, and I've been working now almost for 10 years in this field, is our research participants and our patients are getting very demanding, especially for precision medicine, which I think it's very useful. And I encourage and I welcome that sort of feedback of what are you doing regarding this? And this request for precision medicine, I think, also applies in my field in the gut-brain axis, because there's this thing of, oh, just do the Mediterranean diet. Well, it's not quite like that, because, for example, whilst pro and prebiotics or fermented foods like kefir can be good, most fermented foods, commercial ones, have a lot of sugar to mask that stringent taste. So maybe if you're diabetic and have Parkinson's, maybe kefir is not for you. Or within the Mediterranean diet, if you are in the celiac spectrum, maybe a high fiber diet, again, is not for you. So making sure both our researchers do targeted research, and our NHS team really caters for our specific needs. I think it's fundamental, and I'm glad to see that my participants are more and more demanding towards me.
Thank you, Marta. Adrian, over to you for something that you're feeling hopeful about.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that some of the studies that Baz Bloom and the team in Netherlands are coming up with, where physical activities, like quite intensive activities, given that, but they're starting to develop new neural networks. So, there's a bit of recovery, your brain's reassessing things. So that's highlight me, and it strives me to keep me more active and doing things instead of just sat on my bum. So yeah, that's a bit hopeful for me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the panel. If we share the slide deck, Emma, please. Alice and I are just going to share a couple of things we're excited about, and then we're going to end the session with how you can stay up to date and kind of keep updated. Emma, I'm not sure we can see the slides, but maybe Alice, we can go to you to start. You can share what you're excited about.
Yeah, very happy to, Catherine. So I'm really excited about a new trial that should be starting up towards the end of this year, called EJS ACT PD. It's sort of not got the friendliest title, but it's a really exciting trial because the way it works is it will be testing lots of different treatments. So I think it'll be 3 treatments to stop slow the progression or reverse Parkinson's, and that will be starting later on in the year. And the way the trial is designed is that if one of those treatments isn't showing promise, they will stop testing that particular treatment and switch to a different treatment. So hopefully it's going to really speed up how we test new treatments for Parkinson's, and we'll hopefully find a treatment that works a lot quicker that way. So I think that's really exciting, because it's almost like a shift in how we're actually testing new drugs and treatments for Parkinson's. So Yeah.
Great, Alice. Thank you for sharing that one as something that's coming up. And I just wanted to give a bit of an update. And again, we haven't got time to go into it, but just wanted to share that a phase 3 trial of a treatment called Ambroxol is underway. So this is the largest scale of trial before something might enter the approval process. So there's been a few delays there, but I'm delighted to say that the first participant has received either Ambroxol or the placebo medication, so a dummy drug, as part of the ASPRO-PD trial. And it marks the start of 330 people with Parkinson's taking a component of an already approved drug over 2 years to see if it's beneficial. And this is kind of in the category of having potential to kind of maybe slow down the progression of Parkinson's. So I think is an exciting one to keep an eye on. But we've shared a lot of information today, and we will be following up with some links. But what we want to end on is just showing how you can get involved in research and stay up to date.
Parkinson's UK's mission is not only to provide better care and support for people with Parkinson's, but also to fund groundbreaking research into new treatments. So one day we can stop Parkinson's in its track.
We need that hope. We need that hope. We need to know that people are working on bringing together a solution for us. You know, it's what we need. We've got this for life. Without us guys partaking in research for ourselves, there will be little progress made. We need to be very proactive in helping ourselves by taking part in research.
I like to take part in research, and it's interesting because yes, often you don't get a chance to talk with the experts, as it were. You might see a consultant once a year, but with the researchers, obviously quite excited about the research they're doing, so it's nice to ask questions of the researchers and get a really good response as well.
Well, I have Parkinson's. I've been living with Parkinson's now. Had the symptoms since 2018, and I was actually diagnosed 2022. We're underrepresented, and I think that if we can have someone like me showing others that we all are the same, and if I can just carry that flag for everyone, I think it will show others that, you know what, if Vincent can do it, I can do it.